The year 1900 marked a pivotal moment for Japan. The island nation stood at a crossroads, poised between its traditional past and an uncertain future. The Meiji Restoration, just a few decades old, had set in motion a rapid transformation. Japan was modernizing its military, economy, and society at an astonishing pace. However, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Social inequalities persisted, and the growing pains of industrialization were evident. Japan's leaders faced the daunting task of navigating these challenges while also asserting the nation's place on the world stage. The Meiji era had ushered in an age of unprecedented change, propelling Japan from a feudal society to a burgeoning industrial power. The country's traditional values, rooted in Confucianism and a strict social hierarchy, were being challenged by Western ideas and technologies. This clash of cultures created both excitement and anxiety among the Japanese people. As the 20th century dawned, Japan stood on the cusp of greatness, but the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty and risk. The Meiji Restoration of 1868 stands as a watershed moment in Japanese history. This event marked the end of the Tokugawa shogunate, a feudal military government that had ruled Japan for over 2 centuries. In its place arose a new government, led by Emperor Meiji. The Meiji Restoration was a period of radical reform, aimed at modernizing Japan and strengthening its position in the world. One of the most significant aspects of the Meiji Restoration was the adoption of Western technologies and ideas. Japanese leaders sent delegations abroad to study Western governments, economies, and military systems. They returned with a wealth of knowledge, which they used to transform Japan. New schools and universities were established based on Western models. The Japanese military was reorganized along Prussian lines, and modern factories and industries were built. The Meiji Restoration was a time of great upheaval, but it laid the foundation for Japan's emergence as a major world power in the 20th century. The transition from the Tokugawa shogunate to the Meiji government brought about a profound shift in Japan's political landscape. The Tokugawa era had been characterized by a decentralized system of rule, with powerful feudal lords, known as daimyo, exercising considerable autonomy within their domains. The Meiji Restoration, however, saw the dismantling of this feudal system and the establishment of a centralized government with the emperor as its symbolic head. This centralization of power was crucial for Japan's modernization efforts. It allowed the government to implement reforms, collect taxes, and mobilize resources more effectively. The Meiji government established a new constitution in 1889, which created a bicameral legislature, the Imperial Diet. While the emperor remained a powerful figurehead, the Diet, particularly the elected lower house, gradually gained influence in the political process. This shift towards a more modern and centralized system of governance laid the groundwork for Japan's rapid industrialization and military expansion in the decades that followed. The Russo-Japanese War of 1904 to 1905 was a pivotal event in Japan's history. It was a resounding military victory for Japan, defeating a major European power for the first time in modern history and establishing Japan as a force to be reckoned with on the world stage. The war also had a profound impact on Japan's domestic development, accelerating its industrialization and fueling its imperial ambitions. The conflict arose from competing imperial ambitions in Manchuria and Korea. Russia, seeking to expand its influence in East Asia, clashed with Japan, which viewed Korea as essential to its national security. The war was a brutal struggle, fought on land and sea. Despite being outmatched in resources, Japan's modern military, combined with effective strategy and tactics, proved superior. The victory over Russia sent shockwaves through the international community. It shattered the myth of European invincibility and fueled a sense of national pride and confidence in Japan. However, it also came at a cost. The war strained Japan's economy and led to growing militarism and nationalism, which would have far-reaching consequences in the decades to come. Section 5. A clash of cultures, Westernization, and Japanese identity. The Meiji Restoration ushered in an era of rapid Westernization in Japan. Western fashion, architecture, and cuisine became increasingly popular, particularly among the urban elite. Japanese intellectuals eagerly embraced Western ideas, from democracy and liberalism to Darwinism and Marxism. This influx of foreign influences had a profound impact on Japanese culture and identity. While Westernization was seen by many as essential for modernization, it also sparked a backlash. Some Japanese feared that their cultural heritage was being eroded, leading to a revival of traditional arts and crafts. Others sought to reconcile Western ideas with Japanese values, creating a unique blend of East and West. This clash of cultures led to a period of intense self-reflection and debate about what it meant to be Japanese in the modern world. It also fueled a desire among some Japanese to assert their nation's cultural identity on the world stage. Section 6. Economic Expansion and Industrial Might. The Meiji Restoration set in motion a process of rapid industrialization and economic expansion in Japan. The government played a key role in this transformation, investing heavily in infrastructure projects such as railroads and telecommunications, and providing subsidies to encourage the growth of key industries such as textiles and shipbuilding. Japanese entrepreneurs also played a vital role in the country's economic development. The zaibatsu, powerful family-controlled conglomerates such as Mitsubishi and Mitsui, emerged as major players in the Japanese economy, controlling vast industrial empires. They invested heavily in new technologies and expanded their operations overseas, seeking raw materials and markets for Japanese goods. This period of rapid economic growth transformed Japan into a major industrial power. It also led to significant social changes, as people migrated from rural areas to urban centers in search of work, contributing to the growth of cities like Tokyo and Osaka. Section 7. Social Change and Urbanization. The rapid industrialization and economic growth of the Meiji era had a profound impact on Japanese society. One of the most significant changes was the growth of cities. As factories sprang up, people flocked from rural areas to urban centers in search of work. This led to the rapid expansion of cities like Tokyo and Osaka, which experienced significant population growth and urbanization. This influx of people into cities led to new social problems, such as overcrowding, poverty, and crime. The traditional family structure, which had been the bedrock of Japanese society for centuries, also came under strain as people moved away from their hometowns and traditional ways of life. However, urbanization also brought about positive changes. Cities became centers of education, culture, and entertainment. New ideas and ways of thinking spread rapidly, challenging traditional values and leading to a more dynamic and fluid social order. Section 8. The Path to War, Seeds of Militarism. While the Meiji era brought about remarkable progress and modernization, it also sowed the seeds of future conflict. Japan's stunning victory over Russia in 1905 fueled a sense of national pride and military ambition. The military, which had played a key role in the Meiji Restoration, gained increasing influence in government and society. Nationalist sentiment grew, fueled by a belief in Japan's destiny as a leading power in Asia. This sense of nationalism was often intertwined with a belief in Japanese racial superiority, which contributed to a sense of animosity towards other Asian nations, particularly China. As the 1920s progressed, Japan's government became increasingly dominated by militaristic leaders who advocated for expansionist policies. The military, seeking to secure resources and expand Japan's sphere of influence, began to exert greater control over foreign policy, setting the stage for Japan's involvement in World War II. Section 9. A Legacy of Modernization and Conflict. The early 20th century was a period of extraordinary transformation for Japan. The Meiji Restoration set in motion a process of rapid modernization that touched every aspect of Japanese life, from politics and economics to culture and society. Japan emerged as a major industrial and military power, asserting its presence on the world stage. However, this period of modernization was also marked by growing militarism and nationalism, which ultimately led Japan down a path to war. The legacies of this era, the dynamism and innovation, as well as the shadows of conflict, continue to shape Japan today. The early 20th century stands as a testament to Japan's resilience, adaptability, and capacity for change. It also serves as a reminder of the complexities of modernization and the enduring power of nationalism and militarism. The early 20th century saw Japan undergo rapid modernization, transforming it into a burgeoning power with growing ambitions. Japan's military might grew alongside its economic prowess, seeking dominance. The Great Depression shook Japan, sowing seeds of expansionism. Japan's leaders, feeling vulnerable, looked to Southeast Asia for resources. Japan's expansionist desires were driven by the need for resources and national pride. The Great Depression exposed Japan's economic fragility, making resource acquisition crucial. Japan craved recognition as a major power, feeling stifled by Western imperialism. This mix of economic necessity and national pride set Japan on a collision course with the world. The Great Depression exposed Japan's reliance on imports for vital resources. Expansion into Southeast Asia became a perceived necessity for economic security. Japanese nationalists promoted the idea of a Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere. This militaristic ideology led Japan down a path of conflict and destruction. Japan's annexation of Korea and victory over Russia emboldened its imperial ambitions. The Treaty of Versailles fueled Japan's resentment and sense of injustice. These experiences fostered a dangerous mix of confidence and grievance. Japan's unchecked ambitions loomed larger over the Pacific. The Manchurian Incident in 1931 marked a turning point towards war. Japan's invasion of Manchuria defied international condemnation. The League of Nations' failure to counter Japan emboldened other aggressors. Japan's unchecked imperial ambitions led to further aggression. The Marco Polo Bridge incident in 1937 ignited full-scale war between Japan and China. Japan's superior firepower led to swift victories in northern China. Western powers condemned the invasion but were reluctant to intervene. Japan's campaign of conquest plunged the region into brutal warfare. The invasion of China became a costly quagmire for Japan. The rise of Nazi Germany and World War II created new opportunities for Japan. Japan signed the Tripartite Pact with Germany and Italy in 1940. Japan's strategic shift towards Southeast Asia set the stage for wider conflict. By late 1941, Japan faced pressures pushing it towards war with the U.S. U.S. economic sanctions, including an oil embargo, threatened Japan's ambitions. Negotiations with the U.S. failed, leading Japan to gamble on a surprise attack. The attack on Pearl Harbor galvanized the U.S., leading to Japan's eventual downfall. After Pearl Harbor, Japan's war machine seemed unstoppable. Japanese forces quickly conquered vast territories in Southeast Asia. Early victories brought resources but also sowed seeds of resistance. The U.S.'s industrial might and resolve would soon turn the tide of the war. Section 1. A World at War. Forging the Grand Alliance against Axis aggression. The attack on Pearl Harbor jolted the United States into World War II. This united a coalition against the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. The U.S. joined forces with Great Britain, the Soviet Union, and others. The Grand Alliance marked a turning point in the conflict. Their combined power would eventually overwhelm the Axis. The U.S. became the arsenal of democracy, supplying its allies. The Soviet Union fought fiercely on the Eastern Front. The Grand Alliance faced internal tensions and rivalries. Ideological differences occasionally erupted into distrust. Resource allocation and post-war plans caused friction. Despite challenges, the Grand Alliance held together against tyranny. Section 2. The Arsenal of Democracy, Economic Warfare, and the Strangling of Japan's War Machine. While the battlefields of Europe raged with unparalleled ferocity, a different kind of war was being waged in the Pacific, a war of attrition, of logistics and supply lines, a war in which economic might would ultimately prove decisive. The United States, its industrial capacity vastly exceeding that of Japan, embarked on a two-pronged strategy to outproduce Japan militarily and to strangle its economy through a relentless campaign of economic warfare. American factories working around the clock churned out ships, planes, tanks, and munitions at an astonishing rate, flooding the Pacific theater with the tools of war. The U.S. Navy, its ranks swelled by a wave of patriotic volunteers, imposed a crippling blockade on Japan, severing its supply lines to vital resources, particularly oil from Southeast Asia. American submarines prowling the vast expanse of the Pacific sent Japanese tankers and cargo ships to the bottom of the ocean, slowly but surely strangling Japan's war machine. The impact of these economic sanctions, coupled with the relentless bombing campaign waged by American aircraft, was devastating. Japan's industrial output plummeted, its cities were reduced to rubble, and its people faced increasingly severe shortages of food, medicine, and other essential goods. The economic strangulation of Japan, while a slow and agonizing process, gradually eroded its capacity to wage war. The once vaunted Japanese war machine, starved of resources and increasingly outmatched in terms of technology and industrial output, began to falter. The tide of the war, once seemingly flowing inexorably in Japan's favor, was slowly but surely turning. Section 3. Turning the Tide, Early Allied Victories and the Shifting Balance of Power. The year 1942 marked a turning point in the Pacific War, a year of pivotal battles that shattered the illusion of Japanese invincibility and signaled the beginning of a long and arduous road back for the Allies. In the Battle of the Coral Sea, fought entirely by carrier-based aircraft, the U.S. Navy dealt Japan its first strategic defeat, halting its southward advance towards Australia. This clash of titans, though tactically inconclusive, demonstrated the growing strength of American naval aviation and the vulnerability of Japan's fleet to carrier-based air power. Just 1 month later, in the Battle of Midway, American codebreakers, having cracked the Japanese naval code, provided Admiral Chester Nimitz with the intelligence he needed to lay a devastating trap for the Japanese fleet. The ensuing battle, a decisive American victory, crippled Japan's carrier force, sinking 4 of its precious fleet carriers and killing hundreds of experienced pilots. Midway was a turning point in the Pacific War, shifting the balance of naval power decisively in favor of the United States. These early Allied victories, while significant, did not signal an end to the fighting. Japan, its military leadership still clinging to the belief in ultimate victory, continued to fight with fanatical determination. The road ahead would be long and bloody, marked by brutal island campaigns and a relentless war of attrition that would test the resolve of both sides. Section 4. Island Hopping and Attrition, the long and bloody road to Japan's home islands. Following the pivotal victories at Coral Sea and Midway, the Allied strategy in the Pacific shifted from defense to offense, embarking on a grueling campaign of island hopping towards the Japanese home islands. Under the leadership of General Douglas MacArthur and Admiral Chester Nimitz, Allied forces, primarily American, began the arduous task of capturing strategically important islands, each one heavily fortified and defended by fanatical Japanese troops. The battles for Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa became synonymous with the ferocity and brutality of the Pacific War. Each island a fortress that had to be taken inch by bloody inch. The Allied advance across the Pacific was relentless and costly. Each island from Guadalcanal to Iwo Jima was a fortress bristling with artillery and bunkers. Japanese defenders fought with shocking ferocity. Every inch of ground had to be taken by force. The cost of victory was staggering. Iwo Jima saw some of the fiercest fighting. Marines faced a determined enemy in tunnels and bunkers. The iconic flag raising on Mount Suribachi symbolized hope. Over 26,000 American casualties testified to the cost. The island hopping campaign exacted a heavy toll. The Japanese could not replace their losses as the Americans could. Each victory drained Japan's ability to sustain its war effort. The final chapter of the Pacific War would be the most controversial. Fire from the sky, strategic bombing, and the unraveling of Japan's war machine. As the Allied noose tightened around Japan's home islands, a new and terrible form of warfare rained down from the skies. American B-29 Superfortress bombers operating from bases in the Mariana Islands launched a relentless campaign of strategic bombing, targeting Japan's industrial heartland and major cities. The firebombing of Tokyo in March 1945, a single night of unimaginable destruction, created a firestorm that engulfed much of the city, killing an estimated 100,000 people and leaving over 1 million homeless. The strategic bombing campaign, while strategically effective in crippling Japan's war industries and undermining its ability to resist, remains a controversial chapter in the history of the Pacific War. The use of incendiary bombs, particularly against densely populated cities built largely of wood and paper, resulted in horrific civilian casualties and raised profound moral questions about the conduct of war. The debate over the necessity and morality of the bombing campaign continues to this day, a stark reminder of the human cost of total war. The relentless bombing raids, coupled with the Allied naval blockade, had a devastating impact on Japan's war economy and the morale of its civilian population. Factories lay in ruins, transportation networks were crippled, and essential goods were in desperately short supply. Yet, despite the mounting casualties and the prospect of utter defeat, Japan's leaders, driven by a mix of fanaticism and a belief that the Americans would ultimately balk at the cost of invading the home islands, refused to surrender. The stage was set for a final, cataclysmic showdown, one that would usher in the atomic age and forever alter the course of human history. The Atomic Dawn, a controversial decision and the end of an empire. By the summer of 1945, Japan stood on the precipice of defeat. Its empire lay in ruins, its military shattered, its cities reduced to ashes. President Truman decided to unleash the atomic bomb. On August 6, 1945, Hiroshima was bombed. 3 days later, Nagasaki faced the same fate. The world watched in stunned silence as the atomic age began. Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945. The debate over the bombings continues to this day. The price of ambition. Lessons from the ruins. The ruins of Hiroshima and Nagasaki stood as stark reminders of the devastating consequences of unchecked ambition. Japan's quest for empire, fueled by a potent mix of economic anxiety, wounded pride, and militaristic fervor, had exacted a staggering toll on the nation itself and the world at large. Millions lay dead, cities reduced to rubble, and the global order lay in tatters. From the ashes of this devastating conflict emerged a series of hard-won lessons, etched in the collective memory of humankind. Firstly, the folly of militarism stood exposed. Japan's reliance on military force, its glorification of war and its pursuit of expansion through aggression ultimately led to its downfall. The military, once revered as the embodiment of national strength, lay discredited, its leaders tried for war crimes, its ideology repudiated. Secondly, the interconnectedness of the world had been tragically underscored. Japan's actions, initially confined to the Asian mainland, had ignited a global conflagration, drawing in nations from across the world into a vortex of destruction. Thirdly, the horrors of total war, amplified by the advent of atomic weapons, served as a chilling testament to the need for international cooperation and the peaceful resolution of conflict. The world had peered into the abyss, witnessing the destructive potential of unchecked technological advancement in the hands of a nation consumed by its own ambitions. From the ashes of Japan's imperial ambitions emerged a renewed global commitment to diplomacy, international institutions, and the pursuit of peace, however fragile and imperfect these efforts might prove to be. Echoes of the past, the enduring relevance of Japan's rise and fall. While WWII may seem distant, Japan's rise and fall still resonate today. Lessons from that era hold relevance for today's geopolitical shifts. The allure of nationalism, the dangers of economic instability, and militaristic solutions remain temptations in global affairs. China's rise draws comparisons to Japan's early 20th century trajectory. Understanding Japan's path to war offers insights for today. Diplomacy and international cooperation are crucial. Avoiding zero-sum thinking remains vital. Japan's post-war recovery and pacifism are powerful examples. As the world faces new challenges, Japan's lessons remind us of peace and cooperation. On the morning of December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise attack on the United States Naval Base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. This event shocked the world and forever changed the course of the 20th century. The attack, intended as a preventive action to cripple the United States Pacific Fleet, instead ignited a firestorm of outrage across America. The date, which will live in infamy, as President Franklin D. Roosevelt famously proclaimed, marked the entry of the United States into World War II. At 7:55 a.m. local time, Japanese aircraft appeared over the island of Oahu, targeting the unsuspecting American fleet. Battleships moored in neat rows along Battleship Row became sitting ducks for Japanese bombers. The attack lasted a mere 2 hours but caused catastrophic damage. 4 United States Navy battleships were sunk, including the USS Arizona, which went down with over 1,000 men entombed within her hull. The attack on Pearl Harbor was a carefully planned operation, orchestrated by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commander of the combined fleet. Yamamoto believed that a decisive blow against the United States Pacific Fleet would buy Japan time to solidify its control over Southeast Asia and deter American intervention in the region. The element of surprise was crucial to the Japanese plan. By attacking without a declaration of war, Japan hoped to deliver a knockout punch that would leave the United States reeling and unwilling to engage in a protracted conflict. However, the attack, while achieving tactical surprise, ultimately backfired strategically, awakening a sleeping giant and galvanizing the American people for war. The immediate impact of the Pearl Harbor attack on the United States was profound. The nation was united in grief and anger. The attack shattered any illusions of American isolationism and galvanized public opinion in favor of war. On December 8, 1941, the United States Congress, with only one dissenting vote, declared war on Japan. The surprise attack had exposed vulnerabilities in American defenses and fueled a sense of national humiliation that demanded retribution. The attack also unified the American people behind a common cause. The war effort mobilized the entire nation, transforming the United States economy into a war machine and forever altering the social fabric of the country. The attack on Pearl Harbor had a profound psychological impact on the American people. The loss of life, the images of burning ships, and the audacity of the unprovoked attack created a deep-seated anger and a thirst for revenge. This sentiment fueled the war effort and steeled American resolve for a long and costly fight ahead. The attack also had significant strategic consequences. While the Japanese had succeeded in inflicting heavy damage on the United States Pacific Fleet, they had failed to destroy its most important assets, the aircraft carriers. The carriers, which were at sea during the attack, would go on to play a pivotal role in turning the tide of the war in the Pacific. Japan's decision to attack Pearl Harbor was the culmination of years of militaristic expansionism. Driven by a desire for resources, Japan's leaders embarked on a path of conquest in Asia. They sought to establish the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. Japan's ambitions brought it into conflict with the United States. The U.S. responded with economic sanctions and diplomatic pressure. These measures only strengthened Japan's resolve. The attack on Pearl Harbor was intended to cripple the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Japan believed a swift victory would force the U.S. to negotiate. However, they miscalculated the resolve and industrial might of the United States. The tide began to turn in the Pacific in mid-1942, with the pivotal Battle of Midway. This clash of carriers, fought near the strategic island of Midway Atoll, proved to be a decisive victory for the United States. American codebreakers had deciphered Japanese naval codes, giving Admiral Chester Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, advance warning of the Japanese attack. On June 4, 1942, American dive bombers caught the Japanese fleet by surprise, sinking 4 Japanese aircraft carriers and inflicting heavy casualties. The Battle of Midway marked a turning point in the Pacific War, shifting the balance of naval power in favor of the United States. Following Midway, the United States adopted a strategy of island hopping, bypassing heavily fortified Japanese positions and seizing strategically important islands closer to the Japanese mainland. This strategy allowed the United States to utilize its superior logistics and firepower to gradually wear down the Japanese defenses. The battles for Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, and Iwo Jima were some of the most brutal and costly of the war. Japanese soldiers, indoctrinated with a fanatical code of Bushido, fought with extraordinary ferocity, often to the last man. American forces, though ultimately victorious, paid a heavy price for every island won. Section 5. Island Hopping to Victory. The island hopping campaign was a grueling and bloody affair. Each island assault presented unique challenges, from the dense jungles of Guadalcanal to the volcanic terrain of Iwo Jima. The Japanese defenders, entrenched in elaborate bunker systems, fought tenaciously, inflicting heavy casualties on the advancing Americans. The Battle of Iwo Jima, immortalized by the iconic photograph of U.S. Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi, exemplified the ferocity of the fighting and the sacrifices made by both sides. This tiny volcanic island, heavily fortified by the Japanese, became a symbol of Japanese resistance and American determination. Despite the heavy casualties, the United States steadily advanced across the Pacific. The capture of key islands like Saipan and Okinawa provided air bases for long-range bomber aircraft, bringing the Japanese mainland within striking distance of American air power. As the war entered its final stages, the relentless bombing campaign and the prospect of an Allied invasion of the Japanese home islands loomed large. Section 6. The Atomic Dawn. By the summer of 1945, Japan was on the verge of defeat. Its navy and air force had been decimated, its cities were in ruins from incessant bombing raids, and its people were suffering from severe shortages of food and essential supplies. However, Japan's militaristic government, clinging to a delusional belief in ultimate victory, refused to surrender. Facing the prospect of a costly invasion of the Japanese home islands, President Harry Truman made the fateful decision to use atomic bombs against Japan. On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, dropped an atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima, instantly killing tens of thousands of people and obliterating the city center. 3 days later, a second atomic bomb was dropped on the city of Nagasaki, causing even more death and destruction. The use of atomic bombs remains a deeply controversial decision, but there is no doubt that it had a profound impact on the course of history. Section 7. Unconditional Surrender. The atomic bombings, combined with the Soviet Union's declaration of war on Japan and its invasion of Manchuria, finally convinced Emperor Hirohito that further resistance was futile. In a historic radio address on August 15, 1945, the Emperor announced Japan's unconditional surrender to the Allied powers. On September 2, 1945, aboard the battleship USS Missouri anchored in Tokyo Bay, Japanese representatives signed the Instrument of Surrender, formally ending World War II. The ceremony marked the beginning of a new era, one in which the United States emerged as a global superpower, and Japan embarked on a remarkable path of reconstruction and reconciliation. Section 8. Scars of War, Seeds of Peace. The Pacific War left an indelible mark on both Japan and the United States. For Japan, the war resulted in unimaginable destruction and loss of life. Cities lay in ruins, the economy was shattered, and the nation was occupied by foreign troops for the first time in its history. However, from the ashes of defeat, Japan underwent a remarkable transformation, embracing democracy, rebuilding its economy, and eventually becoming one of the world's leading economic powers. For the United States, the Pacific War marked its emergence as a global superpower. The war had tested the nation's resolve and demonstrated its industrial and military might. The victory in the Pacific came at a heavy price, with hundreds of thousands of American lives lost. However, the war also had a profound impact on American society, leading to social and economic changes that continue to shape the nation today. Section 9. Legacies of the Pacific War. The Pacific War left a complex legacy, one marked by both tragedy and triumph. The war's horrors serve as a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the importance of diplomacy and understanding in international relations. The war also highlighted the dangers of nationalism, militarism, and unchecked ambition. Despite the devastation and loss of life, the Pacific War also gave rise to stories of incredible courage, resilience, and sacrifice on both sides of the conflict. The war forged unbreakable bonds of camaraderie among those who fought and served, and it left an enduring legacy of service and sacrifice that continues to inspire generations to come. The Pacific War stands as a pivotal chapter in the history of the 20th century, a reminder of the enduring power of the human spirit to overcome adversity and strive for a better future. The year is 1942. The world is engulfed in the flames of World War II. Nations across the globe are embroiled in a conflict that has reshaped borders, alliances, and the very fabric of society. The Pacific Theater in particular is a vast expanse of ocean dotted with islands that have become battlegrounds for control and supremacy. In this theater, a young, ambitious empire is making its play for dominance. Imperial Japan, driven by dreams of a greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, had shocked the world with its surprise attack on Pearl Harbor just months earlier. This audacious move, intended to cripple the United States Pacific Fleet, had instead awakened a sleeping giant. Now Japan sought to solidify its hold on the Pacific, and their next target was the small but strategically vital island of Midway. The Japanese military leaders believed that capturing Midway would not only extend their defensive perimeter, but also provide a launching point for further operations against the United States. The attack on Pearl Harbor had been meticulously planned and executed with the hope of delivering a knockout blow to American naval power. However, the resilience and industrial might of the United States meant that Japan's initial victories were not as decisive as they had hoped. The United States, galvanized by the attack, rapidly mobilized its forces and resources. Shipyards worked around the clock to produce new vessels, and young men across the nation enlisted to join the fight. The stage was set for a monumental clash in the Pacific. As Japan prepared to strike Midway, both sides knew that the outcome of this battle could alter the course of the war. The small atoll, seemingly insignificant on the map, had become the focal point of a grand strategy that would determine the future of the Pacific and, ultimately, the world. Midway Atoll, a seemingly insignificant speck of land in the vast Pacific, held immense strategic value. For Japan, capturing Midway would be a crucial step towards achieving its expansionist ambitions. It would provide a forward base for further attacks on Pearl Harbor, threatening to cut off American supply lines to Australia and isolating American forces in the region. Control of Midway would also be a symbolic victory, demonstrating Japan's might and potentially forcing the United States to negotiate a peace favorable to the empire. Unbeknownst to the Japanese, the United States had a secret weapon of its own, code breaking. This secret weapon was not a physical one but rather a team of brilliant minds working behind the scenes. These individuals were experts in cryptography, the art of decoding secret messages. They worked in dimly lit rooms, surrounded by complex machines and stacks of papers, tirelessly deciphering the enemy's communications. A dedicated team of cryptanalysts, working tirelessly in top-secret facilities, had made significant progress in deciphering Japanese naval codes. These codebreakers were a diverse group, including mathematicians, linguists, and engineers, all brought together by a common goal. Their work was painstaking and required immense concentration and skill. They spent countless hours poring over intercepted messages, looking for patterns and clues that could reveal the enemy's plans. They had discovered the Japanese plan to attack an objective they referred to only as AF. This was a significant breakthrough, but the codebreakers knew they needed more information to pinpoint the exact location. They analyzed every detail of the intercepted messages, cross-referencing with other intelligence reports and historical data. Their efforts were like putting together a giant puzzle, with each piece bringing them closer to the full picture. The Americans suspected AF was Midway, and they devised a clever plan to confirm their suspicions. The plan involved a bit of deception, a tactic often used in intelligence work. They decided to send a false message from Midway, claiming that the island was experiencing a water shortage. This message was intended to be intercepted by the Japanese, who would then likely mention it in their own communications. They instructed Midway to send a message, falsely claiming a water shortage. The message was carefully crafted to sound urgent and believable, ensuring that it would catch the attention of Japanese intelligence. The radio operators at Midway sent the message, and then the American codebreakers waited, monitoring Japanese communications for any mention of the water shortage. When intercepted Japanese communications mentioned water problems at AF, the Americans knew they had found their target. This confirmation was a pivotal moment in the intelligence operation. The codebreakers' hard work and ingenuity had paid off, providing the U.S. military with the crucial information they needed to prepare for the Japanese attack on Midway. This intelligence victory was a testament to the power of code breaking and the dedication of those who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. The stage was set for a clash of titans. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, knew that Midway would be a decisive battle. He had the element of surprise on his side thanks to the intelligence provided by the code breakers. Nimitz also knew that he had to use his limited resources wisely. He positioned his 3 available aircraft carriers, USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, and USS Yorktown northeast of Midway, hoping to ambush the Japanese fleet as they approached the island. Section 5. The Japanese Assault. The early hours of June 4, 1942, dawned bright and clear over Midway. At approximately 4:30 in the morning, Japanese aircraft, launched from 4 powerful aircraft carriers, appeared in the sky above the island. Waves of bombers and torpedo planes descended upon Midway's airfields and military installations. American forces fought back bravely, but they were heavily outnumbered. The initial Japanese attack inflicted significant damage, but crucially, it failed to destroy Midway's airstrips or eliminate its ability to defend itself. Section 6. American Counterattack. As the Japanese planes returned to their carriers to rearm and refuel, the American counterattack began. Waves of American dive bombers, launched from the carriers positioned beyond the horizon, roared into the attack. Their target, the heart of the Japanese fleet, their aircraft carriers. The Japanese were caught off guard, their decks crowded with fueled and armed aircraft. The American attack was swift and devastating. Within minutes, 3 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu, were engulfed in flames, transformed into infernos of twisted metal and burning aviation fuel. Section 7. A decisive victory. The Battle of Midway raged on for another day, with both sides trading blows. The remaining Japanese carrier Hiryu launched a desperate counterattack, severely damaging the USS Yorktown. However, the Hiryu was eventually tracked down and sunk by American bombers. With their carriers gone, their air power crippled, the Japanese were forced to retreat. The Battle of Midway was a decisive American victory. Section 8. Shifting Tides, the Aftermath of Midway. The losses at Midway were a devastating blow to the Japanese Imperial Navy, a blow from which they would never fully recover. 4 aircraft carriers, the pride of their fleet, lay at the bottom of the Pacific, along with hundreds of aircraft and thousands of experienced sailors and airmen. The United States, while also suffering losses, had successfully defended Midway, and in doing so, had seized the strategic initiative in the Pacific War. Section 9. The Enduring Legacy of Midway. The Battle of Midway is widely regarded as the turning point of the Pacific War. This monumental clash between the United States and Japan took place in June 1942, just 6 months after the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor. The stakes were incredibly high as control of the Pacific was crucial for both nations. The Japanese aimed to eliminate the United States as a strategic power in the Pacific, thereby securing their dominance. However, the U.S. Navy, with its codebreakers having deciphered Japanese plans, was prepared for the confrontation. It marked the end of Japan's seemingly unstoppable advance across the Pacific. Before Midway, the Japanese forces had been on a relentless march, capturing territory after territory. Their fleet was considered invincible, and their morale was at an all-time high. But the Battle of Midway shattered this illusion. The Japanese lost 4 of their best aircraft carriers, which were the backbone of their naval power. This loss was irreplaceable and marked a significant shift in the balance of power in the Pacific. After Midway, the United States went on the offensive, beginning the long, hard process of island hopping across the Pacific, ultimately leading to the defeat of Japan and the end of World War II. This strategy involved capturing key islands and using them as bases to launch further attacks, gradually moving closer to Japan. Each island taken was a step closer to victory, but it came at a tremendous cost. The battles were fierce, and the conditions were harsh, but the determination of the Allied forces never wavered. The victory at Midway proved that even the most formidable of foes could be defeated with courage, determination, and a little bit of luck. The American forces, though outnumbered and outgunned, managed to outsmart and outfight the Japanese. This victory was not just a military success, but also a significant morale booster for the Allied forces. It showed that the tide of war could be turned, and it gave hope to millions around the world who were yearning for peace. It stands as a testament to the bravery and sacrifice of the men who fought on both sides of this pivotal battle. The Battle of Midway is remembered not just for its strategic importance but also for the incredible acts of heroism displayed by the soldiers, sailors, and airmen. Today, the legacy of Midway lives on in the memories of those who served and in the history books that recount their stories. The USS Midway Museum in San Diego serves as a lasting tribute to this historic battle and the people who made victory possible. A battle that changed the course of history. The Battle of Midway was more than just a military engagement. It was a defining moment that altered the trajectory of World War II. It demonstrated the power of intelligence, the importance of strategy, and the indomitable spirit of those who fight for freedom. The lessons learned from Midway continue to influence military tactics and strategies to this day, making it a timeless example of courage and resilience. The Pacific War, a theater of sprawling distances and brutal island battles, was a pivotal chapter in World War II. This vast expanse of ocean and islands became the stage for some of the most intense and grueling combat of the entire conflict. The war in the Pacific was marked by a series of fierce engagements, each more brutal than the last. The soldiers who fought here faced not only a determined enemy, but also the harsh realities of the environment. Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 plunged the United States into a conflict that would stretch across the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. This attack galvanized the American public and military, leading to a full-scale commitment to the war effort. From the frigid Aleutian Islands to the steamy jungles of Southeast Asia, Allied and Japanese forces clashed in a struggle for supremacy. The diverse and often inhospitable terrains added another layer of complexity to the already daunting task of waging war. The Pacific theater presented unique challenges for both sides. The vast distances involved made logistics a nightmare, while the unforgiving terrain of many islands favored the defender. Supplying troops across such a wide area required immense coordination and resources. The rugged terrain of the Pacific Islands, with their dense jungles and treacherous landscapes, made every advance a grueling endeavor. Soldiers had to navigate through thick vegetation, steep mountains, and fortified positions, often under relentless enemy fire. Japan, fueled by a militaristic ideology, fought with a ferocity that shocked the world. Their soldiers were trained to fight to the death, and surrender was not an option. This mindset led to some of the most intense and desperate battles of the war. The Allies, led by the United States, faced a determined enemy willing to fight to the death. The American strategy had to adapt to this reality, leading to the development of new tactics and technologies to overcome the Japanese defenses. As the war progressed, the United States adopted a strategy of island hopping, gradually pushing closer to the Japanese home islands. This strategy involved capturing key islands and using them as bases for further operations, effectively cutting off Japanese supply lines and weakening their defensive perimeter. Each island captured brought the Allies one step closer to victory, but each battle exacted a heavy toll in blood and treasure. The cost of these victories was immense, with thousands of lives lost and countless more wounded. The battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa, two islands lying perilously close to Japan, would prove to be among the most brutal of the entire war. These battles were characterized by intense fighting, high casualties, and a relentless push by the Allies to secure a foothold close to the Japanese mainland. The sacrifices made in these battles were a testament to the determination and bravery of the soldiers who fought there. Faced with the daunting task of defeating Japan across a vast ocean, the United States adopted a strategy known as island hopping. This approach involved bypassing heavily fortified Japanese positions and instead focusing on capturing strategically important islands. These islands would then serve as bases for air and naval operations, allowing the Allies to cut off Japanese supply lines and gradually tighten the noose around the Japanese home islands. Island hopping was a war of attrition, designed to wear down Japan's industrial capacity and military strength. The United States, with its vast industrial might, could afford to replace its losses, while Japan, with its limited resources, could not. As the war dragged on, the disparity in resources between the two sides became increasingly apparent. The island hopping campaign was a grueling and costly affair. Each island presented its own unique challenges, from the coral reefs and dense jungles of the South Pacific, to the volcanic terrain and determined defenders of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. The battles were often fought at close quarters, with heavy casualties on both sides. Iwo Jima, a small volcanic island located just 750 miles south of Tokyo, held immense strategic importance for both sides. This tiny speck of land, barely 8 square miles in size, became the focal point of a monumental struggle between the United States and Japan during World War II. Its location made it a critical asset, and both nations understood that control of Iwo Jima could significantly influence the outcome of the Pacific War. For the Japanese, it was a key outpost for early warning radar stations that could detect incoming American bombers. These radar installations provided crucial intelligence, allowing Japanese forces to prepare for and counteract American air raids. The island's defenses were meticulously planned and constructed, with the Japanese military investing significant resources to fortify Iwo Jima against any potential invasion. For the Americans, capturing Iwo Jima would provide a vital airbase for fighter escorts to protect bombers on their missions over Japan. The island's airfields would enable shorter, more effective bombing runs, reducing the risk to American pilots and increasing the pressure on Japanese cities and military targets. The strategic value of Iwo Jima was clear, and the U.S. military was determined to seize it, despite the formidable defenses they knew awaited them. The Battle of Iwo Jima, which raged for 36 days in February and March 1945, was one of the most iconic and fiercely contested battles of the Pacific War. The island's rugged terrain, combined with the Japanese defenders' tenacity, made every inch of ground a deadly challenge for the invading American forces. The battle was characterized by its intensity and the sheer determination of both sides to achieve their objectives. The Japanese defenders, deeply entrenched in a network of tunnels and bunkers, were determined to fight to the death. These fortifications were ingeniously designed to withstand bombardment and provide strategic advantages in combat. The Japanese soldiers, aware of the island's significance, were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice to defend it. Their resolve was bolstered by a sense of duty and the belief that their efforts could delay or even prevent an American victory. They had been ordered to inflict maximum casualties on the Americans, hoping to sap their will to fight. The Japanese strategy was to make the cost of taking Iwo Jima so high that the United States might reconsider its advance towards the Japanese mainland. This approach was evident in their tactics, which focused on ambushes, night attacks, and the use of the island's natural features to their advantage. The American invasion force, consisting primarily of Marines, faced relentless resistance from the moment they landed on the island's black sand beaches. The initial landings were met with a hail of gunfire and artillery as the Japanese defenders unleashed their full fury on the invaders. The black volcanic sand made movement difficult, and the Marines had to contend with both the enemy and the harsh environment as they pushed inland. The fighting was brutal and unforgiving, with heavy casualties on both sides. The Americans advanced yard by yard, often at great cost, as they encountered well-camouflaged bunkers and hidden artillery positions. The Japanese defenders, though outnumbered, used their knowledge of the terrain to launch effective counterattacks and inflict significant damage on the advancing forces. The battle's ferocity left a lasting impact on all who fought there. The iconic photograph of U.S. Marines raising the American flag atop Mount Suribachi, taken on the 5th day of the battle, became a symbol of American determination and the horrors of war. This moment, captured in an image that would become one of the most famous of World War II, represented not just a tactical victory, but also the indomitable spirit of the American forces. The flag raising on Mount Suribachi signified a turning point in the battle, but the fighting continued to rage on for weeks, underscoring the immense sacrifices made by both sides in this pivotal conflict. The battles for Iwo Jima and Okinawa were Pyrrhic victories for the Allies, marked by staggering casualties on both sides. These battles were among the bloodiest in the Pacific theater, with both American and Japanese forces suffering immense losses. The strategic importance of these islands made them critical targets for the Allies, who were determined to secure a foothold closer to the Japanese mainland. The Japanese, fighting with a ferocity born of desperation, inflicted heavy losses on the American forces. Their tactics included well-fortified positions, extensive use of underground tunnels, and kamikaze attacks, which took a heavy toll on the advancing American troops. The Japanese soldiers were prepared to fight to the last man, driven by a code of honor that valued death over surrender. The Americans, for their part, employed overwhelming firepower and a relentless determination to overcome the tenacious Japanese defense. They utilized naval bombardments, aerial attacks, and ground assaults to break through the Japanese lines. The intensity of the fighting was unprecedented, with both sides showing extraordinary bravery and resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. On Iwo Jima, over 6,800 American servicemen were killed, and nearly 20,000 were wounded. The island's rugged terrain and heavily fortified defenses made every inch of progress costly. The iconic image of the American flag being raised on Mount Suribachi became a symbol of the fierce struggle and ultimate sacrifice of the American forces. The Japanese garrison of over 20,000 was virtually annihilated, with only a handful of survivors. The defenders fought with a tenacity that shocked the American forces, who had to clear out each bunker and cave one by one. The few Japanese soldiers who did survive were often severely wounded or in a state of shock from the relentless bombardment and close-quarters combat. The battle left an indelible mark on the American psyche, highlighting the brutality of the Pacific War and the human cost of victory. The loss of so many young lives weighed heavily on the nation, and the stories of heroism and sacrifice became a poignant reminder of the war's harsh realities. Memorials and commemorations were held to honor those who had fallen, ensuring that their bravery would never be forgotten. The heavy casualties sustained in these battles raised serious concerns about the potential cost of invading the Japanese home islands. Military planners and political leaders were faced with the grim prospect of a prolonged and bloody campaign that could result in even greater losses. The experiences of Iwo Jima and Okinawa underscored the formidable challenge that lay ahead. The fighting on Iwo Jima and Okinawa had demonstrated the Japanese military's willingness to fight to the death, even when defeat seemed inevitable. This unyielding resistance was a testament to their resolve and the lengths they were willing to go to defend their homeland. The ferocity of the Japanese defense made it clear that any invasion of the Japanese mainland would be met with equally fierce resistance. The prospect of a full-scale invasion of Japan filled American military planners with dread, as they estimated that such an operation could result in millions of casualties on both sides. The potential human cost was staggering, and the decision-makers were acutely aware of the devastating impact such a campaign would have. This sobering reality played a significant role in the eventual decision to use atomic bombs in an effort to bring the war to a swift and decisive end. World War II raged. The year was 1939. The Nazis were a threat. They had the potential to build a new kind of bomb. This bomb was powerful. It would use atomic energy. This possibility worried world leaders. Albert Einstein wrote a letter. He sent it to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Einstein warned Roosevelt about the bomb. He urged the United States to act. The United States needed to build its own bomb. President Roosevelt took action. He established the Manhattan Project. This was a top-secret program. Its goal was to build an atomic bomb before the Nazis did. The world held its breath. The stakes were high. The outcome of the war and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The Manhattan Project was a massive undertaking. Thousands of scientists and engineers worked tirelessly. They came from all over the world. Many were refugees from Nazi-occupied Europe. They were united by a common goal. They were determined to defeat fascism. The project was shrouded in secrecy. Scientists worked in remote locations. They were sworn to silence. They could not speak of their work, not even to their families. Leading the scientific effort was J. Robert Oppenheimer. He was a brilliant physicist. He was tasked with designing and building the bomb. The project was a race against time. The world watched and waited. The fate of humanity rested in the hands of these brilliant minds. The challenges were immense. Splitting the atom was a new frontier. Scientists were working with unknown forces. The engineering hurdles were equally daunting. Building a bomb required precision and innovation. One of the biggest challenges was enriching uranium. This was a complex and dangerous process. It required massive facilities. These facilities were built in secret. They were guarded around the clock. Another challenge was designing the bomb itself. Scientists had to find a way to trigger a nuclear explosion. They had to do it in a controlled way. This was uncharted territory. Despite the challenges, the scientists persevered. They worked day and night. They were driven by their sense of duty. They were determined to succeed. After years of intense research and development, the first atomic bomb was finally ready. It was codenamed Gadget, a name that belied its destructive potential. The scientists had poured their hearts and minds into this project, working tirelessly day and night. The test site was chosen carefully, with meticulous attention to detail. It had to be a place far from civilization, where the potential fallout would not immediately affect populated areas. This remote location in New Mexico, known as the Jornada del Muerto Desert, was selected. Its isolation provided the perfect setting for such a monumental test. The date was July 16, 1945, a day that would forever change the course of history. The scientists and engineers gathered at the site, their faces a mix of anticipation and anxiety. They watched nervously as the countdown began, each second feeling like an eternity. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, in an instant, a blinding flash lit up the sky, brighter than 1,000 suns. A massive mushroom cloud rose into the sky, a towering testament to the bomb's unprecedented power. The ground shook violently, as if the very earth was reacting to this new force. The Trinity test was a success. The scientists celebrated, knowing they had achieved something monumental. Yet there was an underlying sense of unease. The power of the atomic bomb was undeniable. It was a weapon of unimaginable destruction, capable of leveling entire cities in an instant. It was a weapon like no other, a technological marvel that had the potential to change the world forever. It had the potential to end the war, to bring about a swift and decisive victory. But at what cost? The bomb also had the potential to destroy humanity. The devastation it could unleash was almost beyond comprehension. The scientists and engineers were awestruck by what they had created. They had harnessed the power of the atom, but at a great moral and ethical cost. They had unleashed a force of nature, one that could not be easily controlled or contained. The implications were staggering. They knew the world would never be the same. The dawn of the atomic age had arrived, bringing with it both hope and fear for the future of humanity. Section 5, Hiroshima, a city forever changed. By July 1945, Germany had surrendered. The streets of Europe were filled with celebrations, and the world rejoiced at the end of a long and brutal conflict. But Japan refused to follow suit. The war in the Pacific raged on, with fierce battles continuing to claim countless lives. The islands were battlegrounds, and the fighting was relentless. President Harry Truman faced a difficult decision. The weight of the world was on his shoulders as he considered the options before him. He had to decide whether to use the atomic bomb, a weapon of unprecedented destructive power, developed in secret under the Manhattan Project. Truman believed the bomb would save American lives. The war had already taken a heavy toll on American soldiers, and the prospect of a prolonged conflict was daunting. It would force Japan to surrender, bringing an end to the bloodshed and suffering that had plagued the world for years. He ordered the bombing of Hiroshima, a decision that would forever change the course of history. Hiroshima was a major industrial center, bustling with activity, and vital to Japan's war effort. It was also a military target, with significant installations and resources that supported the Japanese military. On August 6, 1945, an American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, took off on a mission that would change the world. It carried the atomic bomb, codenamed Little Boy. The bomb exploded with the force of 15,000 tons of TNT, creating a massive mushroom cloud that rose high into the sky. It instantly killed an estimated 80,000 people, reducing the city to rubble and leaving a scar that would never fully heal. Thousands more would die later from radiation sickness, a cruel and invisible enemy. The world was shocked by the sheer scale of the devastation. The destructive power of the atomic bomb was beyond comprehension. It marked the dawn of a new and terrifying era in human history, one where the potential for annihilation loomed over the world. Section 6, Nagasaki, the final blow. Even after the bombing of Hiroshima, Japan refused to surrender. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, the United States dropped a second atomic bomb. This time, the target was Nagasaki. Nagasaki was a major port city. It was also a center for shipbuilding. The bomb exploded with a force of 21,000 tons of TNT. It killed an estimated 40,000 people instantly. The bombing of Nagasaki had a devastating impact. It left a scar on the city and its people. The impact of the bombing is still felt today. The world watched in horror. The use of atomic weapons had unleashed a new era. It was an era of unimaginable destruction. Section 7, Surrender and its aftermath. The atomic bombings had a profound impact on Japan. Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945. World War II was finally over. The world celebrated. But the celebrations were short-lived. The use of atomic weapons had ushered in a new era. It was the atomic age. The world was a different place. The threat of nuclear war loomed large. It would shape global politics for decades to come. Section 8. A new era, the geopolitical shift. The Manhattan Project had a profound impact on global politics. It shifted the balance of power. The United States emerged from the war as a superpower. It had sole possession of atomic weapons. The Soviet Union, America's wartime ally, quickly developed its own atomic bomb. The world entered a new era of geopolitical rivalry. It was the Cold War. The fear of nuclear war shaped international relations. It led to an arms race. Both the United States and the Soviet Union amassed vast nuclear arsenals. The Cold War was a time of great tension. It also led to a period of relative stability. The fear of nuclear annihilation prevented another world war. Section 9. Conclusion. The legacy of the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was a remarkable feat of science and engineering. It brought together some of the greatest minds of the 20th century, working tirelessly in secret to develop a weapon that would change the course of history. The project's success was a testament to human ingenuity and determination, but it also opened a Pandora's box of ethical and moral dilemmas. It was also a turning point in human history. The development of the atomic bomb marked the beginning of a new era, one in which humanity had the power to destroy itself. The implications of this newfound power were profound and far-reaching, affecting not just the outcome of World War II, but the entire geopolitical landscape of the 20th century and beyond. It ushered in the atomic age. The successful test of the first atomic bomb, known as the Trinity test, was a moment of both triumph and terror. Scientists and military leaders alike were awed by the sheer destructive power they had unleashed. This new era brought with it the promise of nuclear energy, but also the threat of nuclear annihilation. The legacy of the Manhattan Project is complex. On one hand, it ended World War II, saving countless lives that would have been lost in a prolonged conflict. On the other hand, it introduced the world to the horrors of nuclear warfare, with the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki serving as grim reminders of the devastation that such weapons can cause. The atomic bombs it produced ended World War II. The decision to use these weapons was made with the hope of bringing a swift end to the war, but it came at a tremendous cost. The cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were decimated, and the human suffering that followed was unimaginable. But they also unleashed a force of unimaginable destruction. The images of mushroom clouds rising over the cities, the charred landscapes and the countless lives lost or forever altered by the bombings, are etched into the collective memory of humanity. The use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki remains controversial. While some argue that it was necessary to end the war and save lives, others believe it was an unjustifiable act of mass destruction. The ethical and moral questions raised by the bombings continued to be debated to this day. It continues to be debated today. Historians, ethicists, and policymakers still grapple with the legacy of the Manhattan Project and the decision to use atomic weapons. The debates are a reminder of the complex interplay between science, ethics, and politics. The decision to use the bomb was a difficult one. It had far-reaching consequences. President Truman and his advisors faced an agonizing choice, weighing the potential to end the war quickly against the moral implications of unleashing such a devastating weapon. The Manhattan Project serves as a stark reminder. It highlights the dual-edged nature of scientific progress. While it can lead to incredible advancements and solutions to some of humanity's greatest challenges, it also has the potential to create new and unforeseen dangers. It reminds us of the power of science. The achievements of the Manhattan Project were a testament to what can be accomplished when brilliant minds come together with a common goal. However, it also serves as a cautionary tale about the responsibilities that come with such power. It reminds us of our responsibility to use that power wisely. The legacy of the Manhattan Project is a call to action for future generations to ensure that scientific advancements are used for the betterment of humanity rather than its destruction. The future of humanity may depend on it. As we continue to explore the frontiers of science and technology, we must always remember the lessons of the past and strive to build a future that is safe, just, and peaceful for all. The year is 1945. The world has just witnessed the end of one of the most devastating conflicts in human history. The echoes of war reverberate across continents, but nowhere is the impact more profound than in Japan. World War II has ended. Japan lies in ruins, cities are rubble, the economy is shattered, millions are starving. The once bustling streets are now filled with the haunting silence of destruction. The infrastructure, which once supported a thriving nation, is now a mere shadow of its former self. The once mighty empire is defeated and occupied. The future looks bleak. Defeated soldiers return home, their spirits broken, to a land they scarcely recognize. Foreign soldiers patrol the streets, a constant reminder of the nation's fall from grace. It's a time of despair, a time of loss. Families mourn the loss of loved ones, their grief palpable in the air. The emotional scars run deep, as the nation grapples with the enormity of its suffering. But from the ashes, a new Japan will rise. The first rays of hope begin to pierce through the darkness. Amidst the rubble, signs of life and resilience start to emerge. Flowers bloom where once there was only desolation. The war's toll was immense. Entire cities were reduced to rubble and the landscape of Japan was forever altered. The physical destruction was matched only by the psychological impact on its people. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forever scarred by atomic bombs, stand as grim reminders. The devastation wrought by these bombs was unprecedented, leaving a legacy of suffering and a stark warning to future generations. Industries lay dismantled, crippling production. The once thriving industrial sector was brought to its knees, with factories in ruins and machinery rendered useless. The economic backbone of the nation was shattered. The loss of life was staggering, leaving families shattered and a nation reeling. Cemeteries filled with the graves of the fallen, each one a testament to the human cost of war. The collective grief of the nation was overwhelming. The psychological impact of defeat ran deep, shaking the core of Japanese identity and spirit. Cultural landmarks, symbols of national pride, lay in ruins. The very essence of what it meant to be Japanese was called into question. Yet, even amidst the devastation, a flicker of hope remained. Children played amidst the ruins, their laughter a poignant reminder of the resilience of the human spirit. Small plants began to grow in the rubble, symbolizing the potential for renewal. The Japanese people, known for their resilience and discipline, possessed an unyielding spirit. They began the arduous task of rebuilding their homes and their lives. With determination and hard work, they set about restoring their communities. This spirit, fueled by a longing for peace and prosperity, would become the driving force behind Japan's astonishing recovery. The desire for a better future united the nation, sparking a collective effort to rebuild and transform. This is the story of that recovery, a tale of resilience, transformation, and the forging of a new Japan from the ashes of war. The journey was long and fraught with challenges, but the determination of the Japanese people never wavered. It is a story that continues to inspire, reminding us of the indomitable spirit of humanity and its ability to rebuild and thrive, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. The modern, thriving cities of Japan stand as a testament to what can be achieved through resilience, unity, and an unwavering commitment to a better future. Amidst the ruins, changes were afoot. One crucial step: land reform. Before the war, a small group held most of the land. Now, land was redistributed to farmers. This empowered rural communities. It boosted agricultural production. It laid the foundation for economic recovery. Industries, once geared towards war, needed to change. The focus shifted to consumer goods. Companies like Toyota and Sony emerged. They adapted wartime technologies for peacetime use. They produced affordable and innovative products. This marked the beginning of Japan's economic miracle. The government played a crucial role too. It implemented policies to support industry. It invested in infrastructure like roads and ports. It promoted exports, opening up new markets for Japanese goods. These efforts further fueled economic growth. This combination of factors, land reform, industrial change, and government support, created a fertile ground for recovery. It set the stage for Japan's rapid economic ascent in the decades to come. 1947 saw a pivotal change in Japan's history. The nation, still reeling from the devastation of World War II, was on the brink of a monumental transformation. The introduction of a new constitution marked the dawn of a new era. Gone was the emperor's absolute power. Japan embraced democracy with open arms. The new constitution guaranteed basic rights to all its citizens, a stark contrast to the previous autocratic regime. This document was not just a set of laws, it was a promise of a better future. The Constitution enshrined freedom of speech, religion, and assembly. It renounced war as a sovereign right, a radical shift that reshaped Japan's political landscape. The new constitution brought significant changes, empowering the Diet, Japan's parliament, and establishing an independent judiciary. It also promoted gender equality, a revolutionary concept at the time. One of the most profound changes was granting women the right to vote for the first time. This was a monumental step towards gender equality and social justice. These reforms laid the groundwork for a more just and equitable society. The transition, however, wasn't without its challenges. Old ways die hard, and there was resistance from those who were accustomed to the old order. But the commitment to democracy was unwavering. Political parties began to emerge, and elections became a regular feature of Japanese political life. People embraced their newfound political voice with enthusiasm and hope. Japan was transforming into a modern democratic state. This embrace of democracy was crucial for Japan's rehabilitation in the eyes of the world. It signaled a definitive break from the militaristic past and a steadfast commitment to peace. This paved the way for Japan's reintegration into the international community, allowing it to rebuild its economy and society on the principles of democracy and human rights. The new constitution was not just a legal document, it was a beacon of hope and a testament to the resilience and determination of the Japanese people. It marked the beginning of a new chapter in Japan's history, one that would see the nation rise from the ashes of war to become a symbol of peace and democracy in the modern world. The United States, as the occupying power, played a significant role in shaping post-war Japan. After the devastation of World War II, Japan was left in ruins, both physically and economically. The US saw an opportunity not only to rebuild a nation, but also to reshape it in a way that would prevent future conflicts and promote stability in the region. General Douglas MacArthur, the supreme commander for the Allied powers, oversaw the occupation. He became a central figure in Japan's transformation, wielding immense power and influence. MacArthur's leadership was instrumental in implementing the policies that would lay the foundation for modern Japan. His influence was profound, impacting every aspect of Japanese life. From political reforms to social changes, MacArthur's vision for Japan was comprehensive. He worked closely with Japanese officials, ensuring that the new policies were effectively communicated and implemented. The US aimed to demilitarize and democratize Japan. This involved dismantling the Japanese military and ensuring that the country would never again pose a threat to global peace. The demilitarization process was thorough, with American soldiers overseeing the destruction of military equipment and facilities. They purged militaristic elements from government and society. High-ranking officials with ties to the military were removed from their positions, and new leaders who supported democratic ideals were put in place. This was a crucial step in ensuring that Japan's future would be guided by principles of peace and democracy. They introduced American-style education and promoted democratic values. The education system was overhauled to emphasize critical thinking, individual rights, and civic responsibility. American teachers and advisors played a key role in this transformation, working alongside Japanese educators to develop a curriculum that would foster a new generation of democratic citizens. This influence is evident in Japan's post-war political and social structures. The new constitution, drafted with significant input from American advisors, enshrined democratic principles and human rights. Political parties flourished, and the Japanese people began to actively participate in the democratic process. However, this influence wasn't always welcome. Many Japanese citizens and leaders felt that the US was imposing its will on their country, undermining their sovereignty. Protests and demonstrations against American policies were not uncommon, reflecting a deep-seated desire for autonomy and self-determination. Critics argued that the US imposed its will on Japan, suppressing Japanese culture and autonomy. They believed that the American presence was eroding traditional values and customs, leading to a loss of cultural identity. This tension between modernization and tradition was a significant challenge during the occupation period. The close relationship between the US and Japan, particularly in areas of defense and security, continues to be a subject of debate to this day. The presence of American military bases in Japan has been a contentious issue, with some viewing it as a necessary alliance for regional stability, while others see it as an infringement on Japan's sovereignty. Despite the controversies, the US played a crucial role in Japan's recovery. American aid and investment were vital in rebuilding Japan's economy. Factories were reopened, infrastructure was repaired, and the Japanese workforce was mobilized to kickstart the nation's industrial revival. It provided economic aid, technical expertise, and security guarantees. American advisors worked closely with Japanese engineers and business leaders, sharing knowledge and technology that would drive Japan's economic growth. The security guarantees provided by the U.S. allowed Japan to focus on economic development without the burden of maintaining a large military. This support, combined with the Japanese people's resilience, enabled Japan to rebuild and rise again as a global power. Today, Japan stands as a testament to the transformative power of international cooperation and the enduring spirit of its people. The legacy of the U.S. occupation is complex, marked by both positive achievements and ongoing debates about sovereignty and cultural identity.
Du meine Arbeit für richtig hältst, ob du glaubst, dass ich fleißig gewesen bin, dass ich gearbeitet habe, dass ich mich in diesen Jahren für dich eingesetzt habe, dass ich anständig meine Zeit verwendet